BusinessNet Explorer, product news podcast channel. This is B&E Product News, supporting specifiers and buyers. This podcast is sponsored by the B&E Product News podcast library. Well, hi, this is Mick de Leyburn for BusinessNet Explorer. In this special edition brand leader interview for our Building World product news playlist, Martin Killen, MD at Recotherm, provides us with a swimming pool ventilation industry update for 2024. And this year, the focus is on guiding contractors through the application of heat pumps for the indoor swimming pool environment. Martin joins us on the phone. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Mick.
Martin, can we deal first with the definition of a heat pump and the difference between a dehumidifier and a heat pump?
Yeah, if you ask Google the definition of a heat pump, you will get a heat pump uses technology similar to that in a refrigerator or an air conditioning unit. It extracts heat from a source such as surrounding air, geothermal energy stored in the ground, or nearby sources of water or waste heat from a factory. It then amplifies as needed. The point I want you to notice here that in just the first line, it uses technology similar to a refrigerator. The refrigerator in your kitchen is not a heat pump, just like the ride-on mower in your garage is not a car. It uses similar technology, but it is built for a completely different purpose. For the geeks in the audience, the actual technology is called the Carnot cycle, and if you type that into YouTube, you'll get loads of professors explaining to you exactly what the Carnot cycle is. The reason for bringing this up is that a lot of you have been told that dehumidifiers in your pump, they are not. They can operate as a heat pump, but it's only under exceptional circumstances when both cooling in the pool hall and heating the pool water is required. What normally happens is that the pool quickly reaches its temperature and the cooling has to stop and switch off. When you are operating as a dehumidifier, they are not operating as a heat pump.
Okay. Heat pumps are widely being promoted as the go-to sustainable option, would you say?
Yeah, the government is actively promoting the use of heat pumps driven by electric motors. The idea being that the motor will get its electricity from a source that doesn't require the burning of fossil fuels, i.e. wind turbines, solar panels, waves. Where the energy comes from is not what we are looking at here to discuss. It's what you do with it.
Okay, well, what are the heat pump options available for the swimming pool contractor?
Heat pumps come in a number of different forms. The first group we want to look at are those heat pumps that produce hot water in the swimming pool. Of these, there are three main types: air source, ground source, and borehole. There are others you could take heat out of the lake or even out of the sea, but obviously they would require access to a lake or you would need to live next to the sea.
Indeed. Okay, well, can we start with air source?
Yes, the most common of these is an air source, so let's deal with that first. This unit takes heat out of water at 45 to 55 degrees C. There are units that may be coming onto the market that can produce water at 70 degrees C, but they're not widely available at the moment, and they're a lot more expensive. The problem with an air source system is at the very moment you require the most heat out of the system is the moment when the outside air is at its coldest and contains the least amount of heat. So when it is 2 degrees C outside and you're calling for heat, the heat pump is cooling this 2 degrees C down to -3 through the outside coil. This obviously warms it up and will need to go into defrost mode to clear the ice. This is why it's important to fit a buffer tank or a header vessel that can hold sufficient water to cope with the heat demand whilst your heat pump is busy defrosting. Another problem is that in these circumstances, the heat pump will have to evaporate, which is boil the refrigerant gas, at a lower temperature to remove the heat from the air. But because it will still need to condense, which is returning the gas into a liquid at the same temperature to produce the water at 50, it will have to work much harder, and this will reduce the COP.
Okay, well, can you tell us more about COP?
Yeah, most of you have probably heard the term COP, but What does it mean? The COP, or to give it its full title, coefficient of performance, is the ratio between the heat output of the condenser compared to the input into the compressor. It is not and should never be described as an efficiency. If you want to work out the efficiency, you would need to take into account all the energy inputted into the system, including to the evaporator. A normal COP would be between 3 to 1 or 6 to 1, i.e. you get 3 to 6 of kilowatts of heat for 1 kilowatt of electricity. Obviously, this sounds exciting and in a lot of cases is being sold as a way to save money, but you need to be aware that electricity is currently 4 times more expensive than gas. So it may not be the answer if your main objective is the running cost. As I said, the normal COP is between 3 and 6, but when operating in the wheel as 2 or maybe even lower, depending on the make and manufacturer of the heat pump. The advantages of the air system is it's relatively cheap to purchase. There are a lot of units available on the market, and they're relatively less expensive to install than other renewable options. Disadvantage, it's more expensive to operate.
Oh, thanks, Martin. So how does ground source compare?
Ground source heat pumps work in much the same way as the air source, but instead of taking heat out of the ground, this is achieved by circulating water through a pipe loop buried 1 metre below the surface. Its big advantage over the air source is that the ground temperature is a constant 10 degrees C, which is warmer than the air in the winter. So when the heat is required, you have more heat available. This means that the COP of the system achieves is more constant, and as a result, the running costs are lower. The big disadvantage is that it's much more expensive to install, as it requires the burying of the pipe loop and a lot of ground. So the advantages are it's got a bit cheaper to run, disadvantage more expensive to install, and you will need access to an area roughly 5 times the footprint of your house.
Okay, so to complete the picture, please tell us about the borehole option.
Yeah, this system takes heat out of the groundwater and would involve, as the name implies, drilling a borehole to locate the groundwater. Drilling is very expensive, and before you start drilling, they would need to identify the location and direction of the groundwater. I've never seen this done myself, but we know of companies that use water dividing to do this. Again, if you look this up on the internet, it will tell you there's no scientific evidence for this, but I've no companies use it. Big advantage with this is as the efficiency of the groundwater is less land required. Disadvantage, the most expensive of the 3 options we are looking at.
Okay, and how do these 3 options compare to a fossil fuel boiler?
All these systems produce water at roughly 50 degrees C, which is cooler than the water from a fossil fuel boiler. So any heat exchanger would need to be larger than the normal because of the driver of heat exchange is temperature. So if the temperature and the target is less, then to achieve the same amount of heating, the area must be greater. Sometimes more air volume is needed to move through the coil to achieve the desired results. This can mean larger fans, a larger air handling unit with a larger footprint and larger ductwork, resulting in a larger bill for the client. Whilst green ticket ideals are notable, the potential hidden and added costs are sometimes overlooked. Temperature is particularly a problem for us in the swimming pool industry because we operate at a higher temperature than the average home. To give you an idea, a typical underfloor heating system will run at 29 degrees C, which is fine if you're trying to warm the room to 21, but obviously useless if you're trying to warm the room to 30 degrees C.
Oh, no, that's interesting. What would you say is the most popular way to heat pool halls?
Most pools are heated via ventilation systems. Typically, this would involve supplying air at a temperature of 45. So it's off a boiler system of water at 80 degrees C or maybe even 70 degrees C temperature. That would not be a problem at all because you'd have a difference of 80 degrees C water temperature to coming back at 45 degrees C, a 35 degree difference. If this was off a heat pump, the water was at 55, which is on the high side for most heat pump systems, then the difference would be 55 to 45, a 10 degree delta T. So the heat exchanger on the heat pump system would have to be considerably bigger to achieve the same heat output.
Okay, is there a way around this?
One way of mitigating this problem is to reduce the supply air temperature from 45 degrees C to, say, 37. This way you could supply water at 50 or maybe even 45 and still get the air off at 37 degrees C. But now we have to look at the amount of heat going into the room. With a room temperature of 30 degrees C and the supply air temperature of 45, we have a certain amount of heat going into the room. If the air volume was 1 metre cubed a second or 3,600 metres cubed an hour, the amount of heat going into the room would be 18.7. If the supply air temperature was reduced to 37, the amount of heat going into the room would be reduced to 8.7 kilowatts. This is less than half the amount of heat going into the space. To overcome this, we'd need to introduce more air, which can on some jobs mean bigger units. On the pool water side, heating side, it is a little less dramatic because most pool water heat exchangers are sized to heat the water from 10 degrees C to 30 degrees C over a 48-hour period or longer. If you expect that the heat pump period could be longer, then heat exchanger will not have to be dramatically bigger. You will have to ensure that it can achieve the required temperature in the time period specified and that it can maintain that temperature when the pool is uncovered and in use.
Is there any more that can be done?
Up until now, we have concentrated on heat pumps and heating water, and water is piped around the building, serving the pool heat exchanger and the layers of water from a boiler is used. But there is an alternative way of heating.
Oh, okay. Well, has a heat pump-based product been developed that provides this alternative?
Yes, we have developed the Airem unit. At Recotherm, we've got an Airem unit that works directly with an air source heat pump.
All right, okay. Well, how does that work?
There is no water heating involved, so there is no boiler connections or buffer tanks. The hot or cold refrigerant in the system unit heating coil, providing heating and substantial cooling if required. The reason for highlighting the substantial cooling is that we are aware of other units on the market who offer cooling, but they offer 2 degrees C of cooling for a limited period. This is 10 degrees C of cooling without limits. Other advantages are air heating is via a Toshiba, which we consider a top brand, and at affordable rates. Air-to-air heat pump using renewable energy. It is designed to run alongside your preferred pool, eliminates the need for hot water, buffer tanks or boiler connections. Dehumidification is by fresh air, providing a healthier, nicer, fresher environment. Intelligent controls are always monitoring the pool hall climate. Fully variable dampers, valves, fans, providing even more efficiency. It is the most environmentally friendly pool climate control solution for less than you think.
Well, Martin, Airem does sound like an amazing product. Recotherm once again have identified a topical swimming pool ventilation industry issue, put their product development hats on and made available an innovative solution as their champion to set the pace for best practice in the application of heat pumps in the indoor pool environment. So thank you, Martin. Great to have you on the podcast again to update the swimming pool ventilation industry, this time guiding contractors through the application of heat pumps for the indoor swimming pool environment.
Thank you, Mick.
Always a pleasure, Martin. Cheers. Make sure you check out our B&E Brand Leader interview playlist for the other educational swimming pool ventilation industry updates Martin has provided. We've covered pool environment control issues and innovations, indoor pool environments perfect for a healthy swim in the fresh air, how to mitigate the risk of virus transfer in the pool hall, how to improve the sustainability credentials for buildings that house swimming pools, and future trends. For more information about Recotherm and its range of swimming pool ventilation products and services, please go to www.recotherm.co.uk. Well, thank you for joining us for this latest edition of the B&E Product News Podcast. And please, stay safe. Follow us on Twitter at B&E Product News to keep updated on our latest product news podcast releases, and visit us at businessnetexplorer.com to find more product news and information for specifiers and buyers in the construction and building services and associated manufacturing and energy sectors. BusinessNet Explorer podcasts are now available via the Apple Podcasts app, iTunes and on Spotify. You can subscribe to access our existing content and, of course, to receive every new podcast that we publish in audio format.